The Metroid franchise began more than 35 years ago and is considered to be one of the three main pillars of Nintendo. Standing alongside Mario and The Legend of Zelda, Metroid is considered to be the black sheep of the family. It is unpopular and overshadowed, often neglected by the Big N themselves. That is until the upcoming release of Metroid Dread. So not only is there a new Metroid coming out, but it's ostensibly 2D and a numbered entry into the series that hasn't been on a home console since Super Metroid back in 1994. In all of my time being tapped into the gamersphere, I think it's an appropriately bad name to put onto that concept, I don't think I've ever seen such levels of hype for an upcoming Metroid game. And as a massive fan myself, I would feel remiss not to throw a bunch of hashtag content into the mix to drum up further excitement. So, for this video, I want to bring you all the way back to 1986 and offer you another reason to appreciate the trailblazing hodgepodge of ideas that is the original Metroid. The story of Metroid, which can be found in the game's manual, which no longer comes with games these days, kids, you're gonna have to look that one up, is essentially this. The Galactic Federation were researching a creature they called the Metroids, which ended up being stolen by the Space Pirates. The Federation feared that they would find a way to multiply the Metroids and use them as devastating weapons. After a few failed missions to take the space pirate fortress Planet Zebes, they decided to send in the best of the space hunters, Samus Aran, to infiltrate the planet's labyrinthine structure and destroy the space pirate leader, Mother Brain. And yeah, that's pretty much the game. You explore the planet of Zebes, collect items in order to progress, power up, and, you know, eventually go and kill Mother Brain and escape the planet. Not really sure what else there is to say. So I have read that Alien was a big influence on this game. So, you know, all of the enemy and boss designs and, you know, the general aesthetic and the atmospheric, you know, the vibe, you know, all of that stuff makes sense. I'm not, though, getting much of a narrative through line with that, though. The themes of Alien aren't really present here, and I'm not sure how the game connects 5 missiles being needed to open doors, and, you know, applying the subversion of female horror onto, you know, male characters and, you know, ostensibly male viewers. I don't think getting into the weeds like this and diving into the game's mechanics and how they are influenced by things is really going to get us anywhere meaningful. Instead, to gain, you know, that better appreciation, which I spoke about earlier, we're going to have to go in a different direction, to the very start of development. As we were working, the Super Mario Bros. Boom hit, so we wanted to make something that had what Super Mario Bros. Didn't have. Now, what I get from this quote is a sort of girl boss energy. Now, I know the vast majority of people working on Metroid were men, and that term can be quite contentious in, you know, the feminist movement. But, you know, look, this isn't a video about feminism. I just think the term sort of fits what is within this context of this video, so just hear me out, okay? At its core, the term girl boss has value in a way, because when we think about a boss, predominantly we assume it's a dude in a suit.
You have my attention, Detective. My complete, undivided attention.
The term's mere existence asks us why we have that assumption. In a world that has gender parity, the term girl boss would have no meaning. And I think such it is for Metroid. What that developer quote says about the development of the game was that it wasn't really planned in the conventional way you think about how these games are made. Its identity and the decisions that went into making it what it is seems to be a hodgepodge of aesthetics and mechanics that played in opposition to Mario. So rather than the game being inspired by Alien, being made in its image and invoking its themes, it might be more accurate to say that Alien was chosen as an inspiration because its aesthetic and vibe of isolation and horror runs in almost direct contrast to the joy and whimsy of Mario. If we dive back into Metroid 1, I think this core ethos of giving the middle finger to the red Jumpman ties a ton of the game together under the GirlBoss banner. See, in games at the time, especially for platformers, progression was always moving to the right. There was something that felt natural about that, and people can argue about why in terms of, sociology or history or biology or programming or whatever, but when Mario popularized it, it was cemented as the way of progression for the platforming genre. Metroid on the surface looks like a platformer, but in order to progress, i.e. make any meaningful progress, you had to go left. It was a big deal because it shadowed conventions, but it did it quite sneakily, because the game does allow you to move right at the start. You'll just eventually hit a dead end. It's only once you've backtracked to the starting point and keep going that you'll have a moment of revelation. Almost as if the game wants to point out something in regards to conventional progression and movement. To make you do the conventional thing, but then say, why did you assume that going right was the answer? So in essence, the existence of Metroid calls attention to a bunch of assumptions that we had, and that is why I think the game gives off girl boss energy. Also, I think it's quite interesting specifically what item you get first as a result of defying convention and going left. It's the morph ball, which, fun fact, the devs couldn't figure out how to do an animation for Samus crawling with, the technological limitations of the NES at the time, so they were just like, what if she was a ball? Yep, sweet, get it in, it'll do, let's go. Ship it. Let's just ship it. Let's just ship the thing. Why can't Metroid crawl? Well, it's because the NES couldn't handle a crawling animation, bruv, alright? And now we just have, the morph ball form forever. It's great. It's, it's perfect. It's video games. Let's go. You just need to not think about, how Samus, physically actually fits into the morph ball, and we're good. But importantly, the point of this is that mechanically, the item that you get for defying convention and going against Mario makes you small. And Mario's item that he gets first is a mushroom that makes him big. And it's not just in terms of the game's design, with the idea of going left and, being small, but with Samus herself. The main sprite with Samus's power armor, especially back then with, those 8-bit graphics, was much more androgynous, and so players would just assume that they were playing, a dude, like Mario. The endings, however, revealed a sprite that was distinctly feminine. This twisty reveal is the reason why Samus has such cut-through. This move doesn't just make Samus one of the first lead heroines in video games, but the use of the reveal/twist forced the players of the day to confront their assumptions of the gender of the thing they were controlling. Why did you assume you would be a dude? With the other things, and especially that last one, I don't know how much more of a girl boss vibe you can give than that. Famously, Miyamoto created Zelda to capture the feeling of his childhood exploring caves behind his home. And it's easy to see how a game gets made that way. You can choose all of the right stuff that fits that idea, and then you end up with a cohesive package that either succeeds or fails at doing that thing, achieving that goal. Metroid's guiding light, though, was just not to be Mario. And there are infinitely more ways to not be something than to actually be something, which is why I think it is a miracle that Metroid exists at all. Let's circle back to that whole Samus not being a dude thing, okay? What's interesting about this whole gender flip reveal was just how miraculous it was. One of the defining contributions that Metroid had to the medium, and it was just some random staffer who no one seems to be able to name that seemingly blurted it out one day, and that was that. Samus is a girl? Yeah, fine, yeah, sweet. Get it in, ship it. Just put it in, and we'll ship it, okay? Put it in there. People bring up the fact that Samus was influenced by Ellen Ripley. You know, again, going back to Alien. I think in light of this quote, that connection is overstated. It of course exists, but its origin is more complicated, and so very easily could have gone in a different direction. And you can apply this line of thinking to other elements of Metroid that formed its legacy as well. For instance, it might have been easy to say, okay, Mario jumps, why don't we dig? And Metroid could have very easily been like Mr. Driller. Instead, they chose the defining move to be left. And by making that call, coupled with the motive of questioning the base assumption, you are forced to create a labyrinthine maze with backtracking, and that ultimately has you inventing the exploration adventure genre. They could have had multiple endings be tied to killing bosses, or item percentage, or finding hidden rooms, or something like that. But they chose speed. This incentivized players to complete the game more quickly, and this attitude would go on to spawn a massive subculture of speedrunning.
3, 2, 1, go! Alright guys, like you said, this is our first boss order. My name is Oats and Goats.
Despite all of that trailblazing, Metroid 1 is really hard to recommend as a game to simply play, just because of how janky much of it is. But I think that's actually a testament to how hard Metroid 1 went at being a girl boss. When you're defying convention to that degree, not everything is going to click. But somehow, the folks at Nintendo R&D 1 cobbled all of those disparate mechanics and influences together into something that worked just well enough to achieve some profoundly impactful things. For a really long time, I had no idea why this symbol was used as the emblem for Metroid. I thought to myself, why isn't it the Metroids themselves? They cut a pretty mean silhouette after all, and they're the name of the games. It wasn't until I read this passage from that original interview that things made sense. Metroid was conceived to be a counter to convention. In the immense negative space around Mario, Metroid was born. And in that infinite abyss, a spark of an idea was formed that ended up coalescing with a hodgepodge of other mechanics and influences to create something that had a profound impact on the industry. The Metroid isn't the symbol for the series because it is a part of that hodgepodge. The originating idea was the screw attack, which makes it a much better symbol for Metroid than the Metroids themselves. Every game going forward uses this item, and most will pay a further homage to it in some way. It represents the origin point for Metroid 1's counter-conventional spirit, but also, and I think more importantly, it becomes the perfect symbol because Metroid is a video game franchise, and mechanically, the screw attack functions to allow you to move forward with reckless abandon. Alright, nerd, yo listen, alright? You need to be like one of the themes in Metroid Fusion and just chill, okay? Metro 2 was the only one that Sakamoto wasn't directly... Hey everybody, look, listen, okay? That'll be covered next time, where we look at Metroid 2, and even though it, doesn't carry the emblem forward in the same ways as the other games, it did do something that would end up defining the entire series from that point onwards. Goddamn nerds, man, I can't even believe it.